controlling transmission.
Ladies and gentlemen,
the Julio Rivera Show is on.
Is popping an election in crisis. Or so the liberal media would have you believe. Who knows what's going on? We've seen two different faces to what's going on, and we've seen two different faces to the principled conservative base. We have people complaining that Donald Trump is not endorsing Paul Ryan. I did an entire show on the omnibus bill back in December where I advised all of my listeners, my concerned and informed listeners, about within that omnibus bill there was a provision for 300 work visas coming from predominantly Muslim countries when 95 million Americans are out of work. We know what the problems are. Is it an Islamification of America due to the wants and the needs of Barack Hussein Obama? Is it the Clinton Foundation and all of the money that they've taken in from said radical Islamic funders, terrorists, enablers, sympathizers? We saw Donald Trump be relentlessly attacked for making a statement regarding the cons who, by some accounts on some of the media outlets that I've seen, is a sympathizer of Sharia law. The liberal left wants to protect homosexuals. They want to protect the rights of women. But will they look the other way on the sympathizers of Sharia law? And is the Donald Trump campaign off the rails as the liberal media would have you believe? And we will debunk all of these theories this evening on the Julio Rivera Show for this August 4th, 2016. Damn it, we're 13, 14 weeks to the big day. I can't count, so I didn't count, but we're around 100 days, and we have an excellent show tonight. Tonight, we will have a spectacular author that has a book so much telling you all of the missteps, the mistakes, the anti-constitutional actions that have been taken by the Obama administration. And when you listen to him speak, I want you guys to just absorb everything he has to say and understand what has been accomplished in the last 7.5 years, because I had the liberty to go through a little bit of his book, and you know me, I don't sit around and read books, but I know what he's talking about, and he knows what's going on. And we have Andrea Kaye, my buddy, but my first guest is a Republican strategist, a respected party man in Washington, D.C. and around the country. You've seen him on Newsmax. You've seen him with me. And his name is Mr. Bradley Blakeman. And how are you this evening, sir?
Doing great. Thanks for having me.
All right. I'm so excited to have you. And there's a couple of things that are being, I think, overblown in the media. Maybe, or you as a deeper insider, because you've been around the block more than a couple of times. You're like a Pokemon all-star, because you've been around every block. You've collected every Pikachu on every election. Let me ask you, are you worried right now about what's coming out from the Donald Trump camp and Paul Manafort?
Yeah, I'm worried sick, because I think that Donald Trump is really squandering what could be a rout against Hillary Clinton. We're like giving it away. Hillary's the gift that keeps on giving, and Donald Trump is still worrying about attacking Republicans instead of attacking Democrats. Hillary Clinton, was up to her eyeballs in the Iranian deal. She claims to have no knowledge of the payment of hostage money. We've seen the meltdown in Russia. the reset button, which they projected as a reject button. The entire Middle East is a meltdown over her watch, email scandals, Clinton pay for play. I mean, it's not as if we need issues. We have the issues if only Donald Trump would get his act together and understand that, the enemy is Hillary Clinton and Democrats, not Republicans.
All right, well, he's been slighted a lot by supposed principled Republicans that have an issue with the way he's conducted his personal affairs. And listen, I'm not anyone's judge. Only God can judge us all. And I believe as a conservative, you have to a certain extent, allow for things to happen. And the people obviously chose Mr. Trump. And I think that to a bigger extent, this is something we just have to let God run his course. But do you think that people are being driven too much by pride and they're being too judgmental of Mr. Trump for maybe his indiscretions in his personal life and not seeing the bigger picture that he is a true American? He's a patriotic American, and because he's a businessman, he would be fiscally a conservative and closer to the libertarian style of economics.
Well, the problem is Donald Trump isn't letting the issues which he's strong on drive the news cycle. He's letting these missteps rule the day, and it's really, these are self-inflicted wounds. Hillary Clinton doesn't have to say anything. All she has to do is keep her mouth shut because we're doing a great job of screwing this up ourselves. And, the best revenge Donald Trump can have on those he disagrees with in the party is getting elected, because he'll be president of the United States, he'll be head of the party, and he will be the one who is the face of the party. So let's not go fighting amongst ourselves. Let's fight against Hillary. Let's knock her brains out. Let's finally retire this Bonnie and Clyde of politics, the Clintons, and be able to put this country back on track and make America great again. But we can't make it great again if we're fighting amongst ourselves with less than 100 days to go. So the problem is with Donald Trump. It's not manufactured. It's not the left. We got to call it as we see it. And somebody's got to take Donald Trump by the lapels and ask him, do you want to win? Because if you want to win, you're certainly not projecting a path to do that, because we're losing ground when we fight amongst ourselves.
Exactly. And you know what? I was thinking that today, too. I was looking at the way that it's being covered, and to a certain extent, I feel this, right? I'm not a political consultant. I'm not anything other than just really a loudmouth activist. For some reason, I'm wherever I am. But let me ask you something. Do you feel, and this is what I feel very accurately, is he is wildly overexposed, and he's letting himself become a victim of his own rhetoric, his own mouth, the things that come out of his mouth, the lack of having a filter is hurting him more than anything else, only because they keep trotting him out.
Of course, he's the gift that keeps on giving, and the liberal media are eating it up. And, the old adage, any news is good news, is not true. It's not true in a 24-hour news cycle, a Twitter feed, Instagram, Facebook, and every other instantaneous communication you have. Donald Trump needs to be a little bit more controlled. That doesn't mean he can't be the Donald Trump everybody loves, but what it means is that he's got to know when to turn it on and turn it off. And right now, he is in self-destruct mode. And once you get in that mode, trying to turn back is very difficult. And he probably only has really a week to 10 days to turn this thing around, because after Labor Day, that's when it gets serious. And people are going to come home from vacation. They're really going to start to focus. And the first debate is September 26th at Hofstra. And it's really a prize fight. It's 6 15-minute rounds. And he cannot get knocked out. And he's in for the entire 6 rounds, because you can't have no place to go. You got to finish the fight. And he needs to bone up. He needs some serious time with policy people, because Secretary Clinton has been doing this for 40 years.
Exactly.
And Donald Trump has been doing this for a year.
Exactly, and the fact that she's so well acquainted with the process will help her throughout the debate process because, as an ideologue, and this is something that actually kind of hurts Trump, the fact that I don't really believe that he's married to any kind of ideology. I just think that he's pragmatic because he's a businessman. He's going to try to find the best solutions. But the fact that he's that way kind of loses him with some of the liberal ideologues that may be the Trump independents or the Trump Democrats, whatever you want to call them. And it certainly hurts him with the conservatives. I would think that if he reversed course, if he surrounded himself with the true conservatives and came up with some sort of an idea, a contract with America, so to speak, something that he's going to go ahead and push, he can get those independents and the true conservatives to stay with him. I really do think that in a sense he's in trouble, but it's not something that's insurmountable.
Not at this point, but he only has, seriously, about only 10 days to turn it around, because if people don't see that things are the ship is being righted, then they're going to jump ship. And then the word's going to go out in the first or second week of September that it's every man or woman for themselves who's standing for office, either as a first time to the electorate or reelect. Because there's nothing worse than rats leaving a sinking ship. It's not very pretty, and it will happen because it's the law of the jungle. It's self-preservation. We've already seen a few I call minor Republicans, because they're not really household names, who are deserting Trump now. But once you start in September, it could get real serious. And once it starts, it's hard to stop.
Okay, let me ask you two questions. First of all, the establishment opposition to Trump has supposedly driven, in a lot of ways, the sentiment of the people that are anti-establishment to gravitate towards Mr. Trump. The fact that he did not support Paul Ryan is actually something that, to me as a conservative, and I was a Cruz conservative, actually looks good for him. But it may jeopardize him in a sense, or his standing with Priebus and the national, the national party. Do you think he should continue with his anti-established rhetoric, which has brought him this far, and maybe try to bring the conservatives back to him? Or do you think that he should start playing ball with the people that are going to help him win? Because I think it's a double-edged sword. He may get more support and more money if he obeys the establishment, but he's going to kill himself with the people that saw him as an insurgent.
You have to be selected by the party before you're elected by the people. He already has been selected by the party. Why is he still fighting with the party? You got to dance with the people who brought you to the party. So it doesn't mean that you have to support everybody 100%. But what it means is you have to get past the party. You have to unify the party that you have, hoping to change it in a more conservative direction, perhaps once you get elected. But right now, we need the party. We need the base. If we're fighting amongst ourselves, it is going to be impossible to win.
Exactly.
Because we have to broaden. Ourselves beyond the party.
Exactly. Like I was going to say, all that money that they had raised for Jeb to run ads and all those super PACs have to actually get behind him, because let's be honest, he's not putting up all that money. I know he was just talking when he said he was going to self-fund. Do you really think he's going to pull $1.5 billion or less than that? I mean, he doesn't need that much at this point, but do you think he's going to pull $500 million out of his own account to go ahead and try to win this himself if he doesn't get the support?
No, and it's going to be. First of all, he doesn't have that kind of cash on hand. He even said it himself. He'd have to sell a building. You think he's going to sell a building within the next 100 days? No, it's not going to happen. So he needs money to win. And what good is spending money, good after bad, if you don't have the support and the polling to show that it's a good investment?
Yeah, but the polling is a little bit skewed because I read an article saying that and it was from Reuters, and I need to share that, I guess, on my page after this, but it was saying that they changed the previous results of polls on the poll that was supposedly an 8-point lead for Hillary Clinton, and that it wasn't exactly accurate. So I don't know necessarily. Polling it's very subjective. Whoever wants the poll to say whatever it wants to say, because you're in the game, and I know because I'm an observer that they can manipulate popular opinion, and that's, I think, what they're doing.
But that's true, but perception is reality sometimes, and when the viewer is being barraged by the maybe perhaps misinformation that Trump is 8 points down, it hurts your fundraising. So that's why it's so important for Trump to fundraise. Now, it's been reported that he's up in the 80 million. That's great, but he's probably about 300 million short to what he needs to be between now and Election Day to win. So Hillary Clinton's people are not going to have a money problem. What they have is they have a support problem. And right now, we are too busy fighting amongst ourselves to erode her support and gain our support. It's a circular firing squad. It's crazy that Trump doesn't have the good sense to figure it out, that the way to win an election is to beat Hillary Clinton, not Paul Ryan.
Exactly. Fish inside the bucket. Let me ask you one last question. I'll give you about 45 seconds for this. The anti-Trump people, the people that are diametrically, they think opposed to what he's for, they think, and they're conservatives. How would you articulate the argument for them to cast a vote against Hillary, against the most likely winner and the guy that has a chance to actually beat her?
Well, 2 words: Supreme Court. If there's any reason to vote for Donald Trump, it's the Supreme Court, because the life expectancy now of Americans is well up into the 80s. And anybody who is appointed to the Supreme Court is likely to be maybe in their 40s or early 50s. They're going to have a long longevity on the court, and they may outlive the very person who appoints them. So unless you want to turn this country 180 degrees to where we are today, in a worse direction, then elect Hillary Clinton, because you could have 3 or 4 Supreme Court appointments, and, God help us.
Oh,
but just for Supreme Court alone, for generations of decisions that are likely to come down, Donald Trump is your only option.
Exactly, and that's the exact way I feel about it. Brad Blakeman, thank you so much for joining us on the Julio Rivera Show this evening.
That's right.
God bless. I will talk to you soon. And after the break, we will have Matt Margolis. Thank you so much for joining us on this Thursday night.
You're listening to the #1 source for political, pop culture, and sports talk on the radio. The Julio Rivera Show. #ConservaRican. With no fuck left to give.
Find the Lanterns Radio Network on Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, iTunes.
They can intercept this transmission at any time, so I'll be brief. The fight is here. The time is now. Go behind enemy lines.
YouTube, and other social media by searching keyword Lanterns Buzz or Lanterns Radio Network.
Hi, I'm Adam Marr, Apache helicopter pilot and COO of the Warrior Angels Foundation, a 501c3 with a superior treatment for our veterans suffering with TBI and PTS. We have found a solution that pinpoints and treats the underlying condition and are providing that solution for veterans across the nation, but we need your help. Go to waftbi.org to find out more. That's waftbi.org.
We are controlling transmission.
Ladies and gentlemen,
The Julio Rivera Show is on.
And popping on this Thursday, August 4th, 2016, we just had Brad Blakeman on. We asked him some very important questions. But right now, we have an author who has scripted an incredible book detailing the failures, the fallacies, the indiscretions of the last 7.5 years of the Obama administration. And we will introduce him for the first time on the Julio Rivera Show, Mr. Matt Margolis. And how are you this evening, sir?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on the show.
Well, I am very excited to have you. You've written a book detailing the false course that we were sold a bill of goods with Barack Hussein Obama. We were led to believe that hope and change were right around the corner. In a pastor-like cadence, he delivered to the American people a message that led them to the voting booth twice, even after 4 years of failed policy. Now, I want you, if you can, please, because what I'm trying to make people understand is a third term of this nonsense is horrific. What did we get in the second term of Obama when we rejected our Republican candidate?
You know what we got? We got a president who was emboldened by the fact that he no longer had to worry about going to the voters, and he decided to double down on everything. That's what we got. I mean, you know, the election of 2012 just changed everything. I mean, it changed everything for me. I mean, back in 2008 when Obama won, I was depressed enough. But when we went for him again, it was like, oh, this is ridiculous. And that's what inspired my book. You know, it's like, why did people say, yes, I want 4 more years of this. Let's do it again. And
you know what? And I see that there was a trend in 2010. There was a rejection of the policy of Obama, and I think a lot of it was driven because of the stimulus bill. And in 2010, the House flipped back to conservatives because I think people wanted to be more conservative with federal spending. In 2014, we saw another big win, which led to historic gains in the House as well as the Senate flipping. In 2012, however, because of Romney, because of Hurricane Irene, because of a lot of other factors, maybe popularity, because of social media, God knows what, Barack Obama was able to hold on to the presidency. And he does not understand the meaning of lame duck. In 2006, the United States, our regular federal budget that the House was going to pass was close to closing the deficit. In 2006, when the Democrats gained control of both chambers, it opened up again. And it became another, a much larger deficit. What is it going to take for Americans to understand that their money is being misspent by progressivism?
Well, I think the problem is that you have to look at the difference between Republican voters and Democrat voters. When you look at 2000 and 2012 and how Democrats voted, and really what they're going to do again is they're very much emotionally invested in their candidate. In 2008 it was vote for the first black president, and in 2012 it was essentially you can't vote against the first black president. And here we are, 2016, and it's forget about what she says and the fact that she's the most corrupt candidate ever to run for the office. It's you got to vote for her because it's time for a woman. The issues don't matter to them. It is not about issues. It's about identity politics. It's about finding something that they can use, as a hammer against the other side. If you don't support Obama, you're a racist. If you don't support Hillary, you're a sexist.
So how important do you think the media is in that false perception?
Well, I think they craft that whole idea, for people, and they just eat it up. It's I mean, just look at the way they've covered, the past few races. It's they always find some reason to hit the Republican candidate, and I'm hardly a Trumpster or anything like that, but the way they call him a racist and all that stuff, no matter who the Republican candidate is, they'd be calling him a racist.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the way it is. I mean, I really wish that the elections were about the issues, but I think you would agree with me that they're really not. It's a personality contest, and it's certainly it's looking at the candidate, especially now since the election of Obama. It's looking at the candidates and figuring out what do they represent to your feelings and how they make you feel about how you vote, and God forbid someone decides to vote against the first black president or the first woman president. People. I remember a lot in 2012 when people were saying that they voted for Obama in 2008, but didn't vote for him again because they voted for him the first time because they wanted to be part of something historic, and then they didn't vote for him a second time because he was a huge disappointment. We're going to see that again. If these people that vote for Hillary, it's going to be the same deal. Oh well, I wanted to vote for the first woman, and they'll find themselves disappointed after 4 years again. So I think we got to stop looking at the.
Let me just ask you a question. Do you think that the American public, in an election that has gotten so much media attention, do you think that they're still that uninformed, that they're not aware of everything that Hillary has actually committed, all the crimes, whether or not she's charged, whether or not she's convicted, but all her indiscretions against the American people? Do you not think that they're aware of that? And do you think the media is protecting her?
This is the information age. People know what's happened. They know it, but they choose not to believe it. It's, oh, well, they said they saw this about Hillary, but it doesn't stick. They find ways to just discount the stuff and basically saying it doesn't matter if it's true or not. I choose not to believe it. And my book is full of factual information, and there are 1,100 endnotes that people can look and source everything. And for a lot of people left, it won't matter. They do not want to believe it. And it's the same thing every year with every election. It's I'm a liberal, and I'm going to choose to believe what I want to believe about my candidate. And yes, people on the right do the same thing as well. So I mean, really, we got to stop being so emotionally attached to candidates and to these ideas, and really focus on the issues and what the best way to solve the problems that we're facing right now is. And Hillary is part of the problem. She caused all the problems that we're dealing with today. I mean, does anybody really think that she's going to solve the ISIS situation? She and Barack Obama essentially created ISIS.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's the problem that I have. And we have more information, and it's just more worrisome. It's more, and they've tried to hide things, and it's been exposed through either espionage or whatever the hell. But today, actually, I believe it was yesterday, the information coming out regarding a cash transfer, a cash deal. That's like a drug deal. They went ahead and took over a situation that supposedly occurred back in the 70s when the Shah of Iran, who was the predecessor to the Ayatollah, and a lot of the radical Islamic terrorism that would occur later. The Shah of Iran ran his country closer to our values than, obviously, Khomeini or anybody that's associated with that government. Back then, women went to school. Gays weren't getting thrown off of buildings. Women couldn't be murdered for infidelity. Whatever the crazy Sharia law tablet tells you that is allowable. Why would we honor an agreement that went into place with someone back when we probably didn't know what they were now, and give them cash when we're so deep indebted as it stands right now at $19 trillion?
why would we do it? Why would Obama give Iran a pass to nuclear weapons? I mean, none of it makes sense. I mean, like you really legitimately have to wonder what side Obama is playing for, because when you look at like the whole of his decisions, it's really hard to say, yes, this guy is actually on Team America. I mean, I really have problems just trying to justify that, because honestly, and after researching his presidency for 4 years, I really can't say that he's fully on the side of the United States.
Okay, let me ask you a question. Your book. Tell us a little bit about your book and what we can expect to learn by thumbing through and reading the pages of your book. And go ahead and introduce it and tell people where they can get it.
All right. Well, my book, The Worst President in History, The Legacy of Barack Obama, you can get it on Amazon.com as in paperback and as an ebook. You can go right to worstpresidentbook.com. It'll take you right there. And while I'm talking about that, I should say that it's been selling very well. It has really climbed up the charts and stayed up there for the past few weeks now, which is great, because clearly people find themselves enjoying the message and wanting the information. So the origin of the book it really goes back to the election of 2012, and I wouldn't be surprised, and I don't know that you, like me, really couldn't imagine that Obama was going to get reelected, and was probably just shocked beyond belief that it actually happened.
Mm-hmm. I remember that night. I remember I was at Applebee's, and I remember it was 33-3 when the early states came in, and I was like, we got it sewn up, and it was such a disappointing evening.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't even imagine that we would just want 4 more years of this. Mm-hmm. And so, and obviously it turned out bad. And, essentially, as soon as they called Ohio, I'm like, it's done. I can't take this anymore. And I was very depressed. I went to bed and like, I can't take this.
I was in bigger denial than Karl Rove. Like, Karl Rove had a meltdown. You should have seen me in my living room. I was like, I almost broke my my coffee table.
Yeah, I'm with you. And so, my co-author, Markman, and I had written a book a few years earlier that came out in 2007. And, neither one of us were really had thought about writing another book. And, the re-election of Obama really just got me thinking. I'm like, how did this happen? And when I thought about it, I just kept thinking about all the things that happened in his first term where I remembered it happening, but I wasn't hearing it being talked about. One of the things that one of my prime examples is the BP oil spill and the way the government handled that. I mean, it was a complete disaster. I mean, it made the
wasn't it like 3.5 months, or was it 45 days, something like that, where they didn't do anything?
It was an extraordinary amount of time, and the difference between the BP oil spill and Katrina is that the BP oil spill was absolutely 100% the responsibility of the U.S. government. Mm-hmm. Katrina was a state-based response that was botched, and everything that happened there, the state, by law, had to request the federal government to do. So it was a botched job by
it was the states, insurance companies, all of them.
Right. I mean, a complete disaster on the state level, and people just were like, "Oh, it's Bush's fault," So here we have a situation where the Obama government just totally dropped the ball, and Mitt Romney didn't say anything about it, and people weren't talking about it. I mean, this is a prime example of failed leadership. No one was talking about it.
Let me ask you a question, though. A lot of like natural disasters, people pay for private insurance and things like that. Those private insurance companies, which have for a long time, and it's not as bad as it is now with medical care, because obviously the government is subsidizing medical companies, and Obamacare is a total disaster. But the pools that people pay into for disaster insurance, do you think that they turned against maybe the government and made it seem like The private person, the citizen, the American person has to actually depend on the government more than they do to themselves by just paying their own premium for whatever disaster insurance they get.
I don't know too much about disaster insurance, but I do know that oftentimes, regardless of whether you have it or not, the government will step in, and people know that the government will be there, regardless of whether you have the insurance or not.
And we should have a rainy day fund for that, because God knows that was a rainy day. But we should have a rainy day fund for it. But there was a lot of legislators in Washington that were criticized for voting against support for those disasters based on the fact that the insurance companies were pocketing so much in administrative fees. A lot of the money that they're taking in premiums are supposed to be able to be doled out to people who suffer from those tragedies. So where do you think the disconnect is? Do you think that it's lobbyists in Washington protecting these insurance companies from having to actually dole out what they should? Or do you think it's legislators in Washington wanting to make themselves so important that they're going to go ahead and try to allocate taxpayer dollars towards something that insurance companies are supposed to take care of?
I think it's a combination of a lot of things that you had said, government regulations and all that stuff. You can call it crony capitalism, you can call it almost anything. It's all a big mess. And, whether it's Katrina or the BP oil spill, the government has never been the best for emergency response, and people shouldn't rely or expect the government to always be there because, in the end, private emergency relief and stuff like that is really ends up performing a lot better. Do
you mean government-funded ones or private sector ones?
Private sector versus government.
Mm.
But so back to the BP oil spill and Obama and all that stuff. So and I thought about it. That was just one example of something that I thought should have been talked about more. That just was no longer in the forefront during the 2012 election. So I talked with my co-author Mark. I'm like, I think we need to write a book that kind of compiles every single thing about the Obama years for people to know, because what I'm worried about is that people are going to just gloss over all the failures, and because Obama is the first black president, history is going to want to paint this rosy picture of what happened. I mean, when we look at even everything from recent history to how Bill Clinton is portrayed, Bill Clinton is the guy who balanced the budget, and it was such a peaceful time and all that. A lot of that's just crap. I mean, he didn't.
Yeah, it was actually driven by Newt Gingrich and their conservative House back at that time.
Exactly, but he gets the credit for it, and that's just wrong. And then and my biggest example is Franklin Delano Roosevelt. What's his legacy? He's the guy that ended the Depression. He didn't end the Depression. He made it longer. He made it worse.
Mm-hmm.
And what do we gain by having this false narrative of history being taught to our kids? I have a son. He's 2 years old. What is he going to be taught about Barack Obama? I don't want him to be taught that he was such a great president, and I just can't even imagine what people are going to be saying about Obama. But when it comes time for him to go to school.
You know what? I'll definitely say this: world history will be different than American history on Barack Hussein Obama. Thank you so much for joining us, Matt. Why don't you tell everybody where they can get you on social media?
You can follow me personally on Twitter at Matt Margolis, or you can follow the book account at Worst President. And you can buy the book online on Amazon. You can just go right to worstpresidentbook.com. It is available as a paperback and as an ebook, and I guarantee you will not find any other book that is more comprehensive when it comes to cataloging the failures of Obama.
Thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to having you again. Thank you, Matt Margolis. Go get his book. God bless, and thank you. And on the other side of the break, we will have Andrea Kaye.
Politics got you down? Is your team in last place? Is your significant other sleeping with your neighbor? Well, cheer up. The Julio Rivera Show is on. Deal with your problems afterwards.
Find the Lanterns Radio Network on Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, iTunes.
They can intercept this transmission at any time, so I'll be brief.
Hi, I'm Adam Moore, Apache helicopter pilot and COO of the Warrior Angels Foundation, a 501c3 with a superior treatment for our veterans suffering with TBI and PTS. We have found a solution that pinpoints and treats the underlying condition and are providing that solution for veterans across the nation, but we need your help. Go to waftbi.org to find out more. That's waftbi.org.
Politics got you down? Is your team in last place? Is your significant other sleeping with your neighbor? Well, cheer up. The Julio Rivera Show is on. Deal with your problems afterwards.
And you know it's the Julio Rivera Show, so we're having technical difficulties. Yeah.
Hit it.
Andrea, are you there?
I am here, baby doll.
Oh my God, it's so loud. It's just all fuzz.
We are controlling transmission.
Ladies and gentlemen,
The Julio Rivera Show is on.
I'm the Julio Rivera Show, and I have Andrea Kaye. And how are you this evening, Andrea?
Well, I'm good, but if we had a rough transition, that's just kind of symbolic for how things usually are for us when the two of us are discussing politics,
God,
right?
It's a war. It's a war. The war to settle the score. God damn it. No, I love you. I think you're awesome. I know that we disputed a lot of issues during the primary based on our choice of candidate. Everyone knows that I was for Senator Ted Cruz, and you were for Trump before I was, and I will be more than open to admitting that. But I believe based on the choices, based on the Supreme Court, based on the Attorney General, based on the Secretary of State, that we all need to fall in line behind the Republican Party, as much as it breaks my soul to say. But let me ask you a question. Are you truly concerned with the news that has been coming out in the last couple of days regarding our ticket?
Well, I tell you, what I'm concerned about is the overreaction on the part of our party. When I'm hearing, no offense to your first guest who was on the show, but I mean, every time you've got somebody like Newt Gingrich or somebody like your first guest coming out and expressing, oh my gosh, there's self-destruction going on, I'm thinking to myself, they're all this gnaw-boning and hand-wringing over this is an overreaction, and what it's an overreaction to is the mainstream media and the left, and even those within the Republican Party who really don't want Trump, would really rather see Hillary win, and the overreaction on the part of those individuals like Newt Gingrich and like others, Kasich and McCain and others who have all piled on. All they're doing is looking for an opportunity to pile on. They're like Pavlov's dogs to this. What did he supposedly say that has caused all this hysteria? Julio?
You know what? A lot of people have stood against, and within the party. Let me explain something to you for the people that are listening and the conservatives that are listening, because I identify with a lot of the Trump conservatives, and I understand why. In 2014, conservatives took control of the Senate, and we had both chambers. We got screwed over by Boehner in 2014 with the Omnibus, and by Ryan in 2015 with the Omnibus. That was the reason why a lot of people wanted an outsider. And we have our outsider. So if he goes and says, I'm not endorsing McCain, screw McCain. I endorse Dr. Ward. And I was a friend of Alex's. I liked Alex a lot too before he dropped out, but I wanted someone other than McCain. Exactly with Nealon. My first guest ever on Lanterns Radio Network was Paul Nealon. And I did a whole episode dedicated to the omnibus bill and calling out Paul Ryan for all the egregious spending. So why are conservatives, Republicans, voters in general that want to shut down the establishment upset that he won't endorse these rhinos?
Yeah, I mean, we're really supposed to believe that this is that the supposed drop in the polls and all this unrest and concern and hysteria is on the part of the voters who don't want Ryan, who put Trump at the top of the ticket because Ryan and McCain and others were all a part of the very GOP party that betrayed us, as you so well described. It doesn't even make sense to me. And so what this is, and I was asked yesterday on another show whether or not what would be the hypothetically what would the GOP do if Trump dropped out? I said, you know what? I'm not even giving air to that discussion. I said that was probably floated by somebody within the party, the Republican Party, and I'm not even going to feed that. This is nonsense. You know, on Tuesday's show, on my show on Tuesday, I talked about. You know, Trump had said on Tuesday, which was a big news story, he had said that he was concerned that the election might be rigged. It's already rigged in a variety of different ways, which is why turnout is so important. One of the ways that it's rigged is a media that is obsessed with every word that comes out of his mouth. And if he hadn't said anything against the cons that they could use against him, they would just manufacture something. So, you know, this is all manufactured nonsense, and I don't even believe that there's supposedly some intervention that's supposedly gonna be happening, you know, within the Trump campaign.
I honestly don't think that either. But this is the one thing that I worry about. I'm looking at this from the outside. Everybody knows that I wasn't originally, and I did everything I could to hit that campaign. But damn it, they were impenetrable. They were like the irresistible force. They could not be beaten. But I'll tell you this much. He is severely overexposed because you have a media that's going to take every little thing that he says. They're going to what are they going to, they're going to put it under a microscope. They're going to try to analyze it 100 different ways, and they're going to try to spin it into something that it isn't. Donald Trump, for the most part, has been on message, and for the most part, it's been conservative. The one thing that I do see him do, and I'm going to be completely honest, is when he talks about making deals with hospitals, when he talks about leaving some people into the country, what he tries to do is he tries to pander to independents. And for the first time in many elections, we have a pronounced advantage with our candidate on independents. Bernie has a lot of independents too, but they were Democrat leaning. That's why he's playing towards them, because he understands that they're either going to stay home or they won't vote for Hillary because they know what she is, even though Bernie himself didn't hit her. What we have right now is a situation where we have someone who's been tried, convicted, and hanged in the court of public opinion, which is Hillary Rodham Clinton, for all the dangerous indiscretions that she's had that have endangered the American people. But Trump can't sink his own campaign and kill his own advantages.
Well, yeah, I don't think that he's sinking his campaign, but I think that all that narrative, I think, is false and it's trumped up. But what I do agree with you on is I do think he needs to be hat tip to him for being willing to take a question from anybody, for being willing to do all these press conferences when she hasn't in 250 days, for being willing to sit down and be interviewed by everybody. However, I do think it's time for him to be a little bit more disciplined. I would not give the time of day to George Stephanopoulos, who gave $75,000 to the Clinton Foundation, unless I turned it around and busted him on it in the middle of an interview. Okay? So, and I do think that he should.
You're talking about George Stephanopoulos?
Yeah.
He gave him $75,000 to the Clinton Foundation?
Yeah. And
to a pay-to-play operation that controls the media and controls the world's foreign policy. George Stephanopoulos is still considered a legitimate journalist?
Yeah, in fact, he's still the host of Good Morning America. Can you imagine Karl Rove sitting in...
They need us there. They need us. They need Andrea Kaye and Julio Rivera.
Exactly. I'm with you there, baby. They don't need that Michael Strahan over, or he's on the Today Show, wherever he is. But, you know, imagine Karl Rove interviewing Hillary Clinton. You think she would sit down and do an interview with Karl Rove? Come on.
She will not give an interview. You know what? She won't give an honest interview. She'll give an interview under very controlled circumstances. She doesn't do town halls. She doesn't do, what they call press conferences. She hasn't done one in forever. She doesn't want to be asked candid questions in real time, and that's the problem.
Yeah, and you know what? I think Trump could learn a little bit from that. He doesn't need to go out and take so many questions from people. Why do that at this point? I do think he needs to get a little bit more discipline. He's got so much that he could talk about and just stay on message about and bury her. Bury her. Absolutely.
You know what? Most of his answers are actually pretty on point. It's the delivery. And unfortunately, we live in a society right now where people are so sensitive and they overanalyze every little stupid thing, and political correctness is at its apex. And a guy like Donald Trump that answers questions honestly, and I don't believe he's going to do every last single thing that he says he's going to do. He's going to try, but you have to consider that we have a system of checks and balances, and I think he will more readily accept and respect that system because he's an American and a proud American than Hillary Clinton, that will make cabinet appointments, bureaucracy appointments, and, towards people that have the same status, communist, big liberal agenda. They're probably Alinskyites. They're probably 60s radicals just like she was. And they're going to continue in this horrible tradition that has destroyed America in the last 7.5 years.
Well, it's even worse than that for me. When you look at what the Clinton and the Obama administration, and to me they're one and the same at this point, and they know that. We have what most concerns me, and one of the reasons why Khan was picked at the DNC to do what he did, run the con that he did on us, was because the left must tamp down any concerns that the American people have against Islam and Muslims, because the left is partnering with the Islamists in order to transform us into a Marxist state. They can't do it on their own, so they've got to partner with Sharia, which is very similar to a Marxist society. It's a centralized government.
Exactly, yeah. You know what?
Complete control over everybody's lives. And they are in bed. The left is in bed with Islam and Sharia. And make no mistake about it, that's their inroads to get us into a Marxist society. And did you know that there was a delegation with the mayor of Baltimore that went down to Cuba to study economic ideas and economic models for cities? That's where they're taking us. They can't do it on their own, so they've got to partner with the Muslims who want Sharia here. And,
the Cuban communists.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what? Let me explain. And I always have this argument with people. And I always tell them the same thing. When they argue about, Islam is a peaceful religion, and it's Abrahamic, and it's this, and it's that. The Muslim religion grew throughout the world as a military dictatorship in many senses. It was almost like Genghis Khan. Muhammad was a military dictator. He was a conqueror. The Crusades were started as opposition for Muslim occupation of Christian lands. They were trying to fight back against getting beheaded, the convert or die, the Sharia absolutism. And that's the problem that American liberals don't understand. It's not what the liberals are presenting it to be. It's not a peaceful religion. And most of the Muslims that are here, whether or not they're radicalized terrorists, they're sympathetic to the cause of Sharia law.
Absolutely. Now, I kind of agree with Bridget Gabriel. There are and I've had Dr. Zuhdi Jasser on my show many times. There are some actual moderate Muslims that actually embrace democracy and freedom. But I agree with Bridget Gabriel when she says, quite frankly, they're irrelevant. 60-something% of American Muslims want to like Khan himself, want to replace the U.S. Constitution with Sharia. The jihad is being waged against us in two ways, through the sword and through Sharia. And the left knows it. Obama knows it. He's all for it, I believe, and so was Clinton, because really it's all about power. Islam is a political ideology with a supposed religious element. The very definition of Islam is submission. There was a reason why President Obama, on the National Day of Prayer, took to the microphone and bashed Christians and blamed us for the Crusades.
Exactly. He said that there were many deaths, many acts of murder that I guess happened at the hands of Christians during the Crusades. But like I was saying, it was a response to a military dictatorship. It was a fight against tyranny because Islam is an ideology in many senses, and they want to they're Islamofascists in many ways. They want to control, it's convert or die, and that was the reason. And listen, you can look at the Barbary Wars. America has been involved in a war against Islam for 235 years. If you really look at what's occurred, you know, when they were taking our sailors, when they were taking our shipments, they were beheading American merchants. They were doing all that years ago. You know, this isn't new.
No, this isn't new. And what is happening in America right now that Paul Ryan is involved in, the importation of hundreds of thousands of Muslims into this country, of which we know, if the most conservative estimate of 10% are terrorists, we are literally importing terrorism into our country. We know what's happened in Europe when they've done that. So America, the never Trump people, the people who were still panicking right now, oh my gosh, the big story today, I don't know if you've heard it, was the people are starting to hit me with this, was Melania's visa that she came here on. Was she here on the right visa?
Who gives a fucking shit?
Are you kidding me?
Exactly.
You're not sure if you're going to be able to vote for Trump because you're not sure how Melania came here on a visa when we've got Hillary Clinton wanting to flood our country with Islamists who want to come here and destroy us. We cannot sit back and hope. I think it was you who said yesterday, maybe when we were on Xander's show, that 4 years from now we're going to have some glorious conservative renaissance. Too late.
It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen because illegals are going to vote. You got people like Jerry Brown. You have people now that may stand up against, the governor of Texas, Greg Abbott. You have liberals who are going to fund the effort to try to get states to allow illegal immigrants to be able to vote. And sanctuary cities under Paul Ryan aren't going away. Like, listen, there's a reason why Mr. Trump did not endorse Paul Ryan as the senior member of the Republican Party. You know why? Like I said earlier in the show, the 300,000 visas going to predominantly Muslim countries. You cannot allow these people to vote Democrat.
Right. And shame on Newt Gingrich, who supposedly is a supporter for Trump, was actually on the short list for VP, coming out and bashing Trump for criticizing Ryan. Ryan is the one who came out when Trump said, after a terrorist attack, we need to temporarily halt, something that Jimmy Carter did. We need to temporarily halt Muslims coming here until we can figure out what they're doing, who they are, and what our government is doing here.
Yeah, but you know what? James Comey said that there's no way we possibly could because they've been displaced from where they are. So we have to just put a total and complete halt to the entire program.
But what did Paul Ryan do? Came to the microphone immediately and said that Trump, that's not our values. That doesn't represent the values of my party. Well, you know what? Then you're not, then I don't know what party you're in, Paul Ryan. You're not in my party, or maybe I'm not in yours, Paul Ryan. So I was really disappointed with Newt Gingrich for coming out because Trump had every right to say, you know what? I'm just not there yet when it comes to Paul Ryan. And Paul Ryan was the one who supposedly didn't even want to be permanent Speaker of the House. Remember, he did the phony dragging his heels, wasn't sure he wanted the gig. Well, you know what? He's got the gig, and he's proven.
Oh, he's so humble. He's so humble.
Right.
He's a big establishment plant, and I can't stand him. Listen, Andrea, why don't you tell everybody where they can listen to your show?
Well, my show is on Tuesdays, 6 p.m. Pacific time on AM 1170 KCBQ here in San Diego. My podcast is on my website, AndreaKShow.com. I'm also on Red Nation Rising's incredible new network, so check it out there. And I'm lucky enough to be on your show occasionally. I'm on America Trends every once in a while. So follow me on Twitter at Andrea Kaye Show. My website is AndreaKShow.com. I'm on Facebook. And love the ConservaRican.
I love you too, Andrea. Red Nation Rising will live forever and decide the next election. This has been the Julio Rivera Show on Lanterns Radio Network. God bless everyone. We'll see you next week.